I remember the exact weight of the pen in my fingers, heavier than any bolt of fabric I'd ever lifted. 3:07 p.m., a Thursday in late September, the notary's stamp falling like the gavel on my own trial. The ink bloomed across the deed the way dye spreads through silk, slow and irreversible. For one suspended heartbeat, I believed I'd bought my parents a slice of heaven, a white cottage 3 blocks from the Pacific, paid in full with a decade of my life. $380,000. Every skipped birthday, every overtime shift that left my eyes raw, every dream I'd folded into a single brass key engraved salt air and forever. I signed Eleanor Voss, and the room smelled like salt that hadn't reached us yet. Let me take you back further, because betrayal doesn't crash through the door. It seeps in through the cracks you papered over with love. My world before the house was a 380-square-foot studio on the 7th floor of a pre-war walk-up in downtown LA. The walls were the color of nicotine-stained teeth. The single window framed a brick wall and a neon pawnshop sign that flickered PAWN like a heartbeat. My couch came from a curb in Silver Lake, reupholstered in leftover indigo from a failed client pitch. I designed textiles for a behemoth that clothed half the West Coast in lies. Polyester pretending to be linen, greed masquerading as luxury. I didn't care. Every paycheck funneled into an account labeled MOM and Dad in capital letters, the way other people label emergency funds. Dad still carried the scent of motor oil and metal shavings after 42 years on the line at the plant, his shoulders curved forward like a question mark from decades of lifting engines he'd never own. Mom's hands were roadmaps of bleach burns and cracked cuticles from scrubbing toilets in houses that smelled like lemon polish and other people's money. They had never owned a single square foot of earth. This cottage, this was their porch swing, their coffee at sunrise, their rent-free exhale after a lifetime of holding their breath. I found the house the way you find a bruise you didn't know you had, by accident, while driving home from a college friend's gender reveal in Laguna. The for sale sign leaned sideways in the wind, paint chipped like old nail polish. The garden was a battlefield of dead jasmine and stubborn dandelions. I parked, kicked off my sandals, and felt the salt-crusted oak floors bite into my bare feet. 2 bedrooms. A kitchen window that framed the ocean like a painting I could finally afford to give away. A lemon tree in the backyard that looked like it had given up on life the same year Dad's plant cut over time. I stood in the empty living room and saw them there, Dad in his threadbare cardigan reading the classifieds, Mom humming Sinatra off-key while she sliced lemons for iced tea. I called the listing agent from the driveway, voice shaking with something that felt like prayer. Cash offer.
No contingencies. No inspection.
The widow's heirs wanted the ghost of their mother gone yesterday. Financing was a slow, deliberate suicide. I cashed my 401k and watched the balance drop to zero the way a heart monitor flatlines, 1 beep at a time. Took a second mortgage on my condo until the bank owned more of my future than I did. Turned down a director role in Seattle that came with a corner office and a view of Puget Sound because I needed to be close enough to hand Mom the key and watch her face when the Pacific kissed her horizon. My boss, Gretchen, noticed the tremor in my hands during fittings, the way I measured hems with the precision of someone counting heartbeats. "You're unraveling," she said, eye sharp behind her tortoiseshell glasses. I smiled the way you smile at a doctor delivering bad news. Some threads are meant to break, so stronger ones can take their place. Then there was my sister, Mira. 2 years younger, married to Blaine, the kind of man who introduced himself with his golf handicap and a Rolex that costs more than Dad's annual pension. They lived in a 6-bedroom monument to insecurity in Orange County, the kind of house that came with a 3-car garage and a wine fridge that hummed like a guilty conscience. Blaine never let you forget he'd build it from scratch, as if spreadsheets and sales quotas were the same as calluses. Mira abandoned her PR degree after kid number 1, traded ambition for playdates and passive-aggressive PDA threads about organic snacks. The children were beautiful hurricanes, crayon on walls, iPad tantrums, grandparents' entire solar system orbiting their sticky fingers. Mira FaceTimed Mom daily with updates about finger painting disasters and the cost of Montessori. She arrived every Sunday with bakery boxes from the overpriced patisserie in Newport and curated tears about how overwhelmed she was. I wired money for Dad's insulin and got a heart emoji reply that felt like a participation trophy. I was the mule, the childless engine, the sister who paid the electric bill and disappeared into the wallpaper. The anniversary party was October 14th. I rented the private room at Trattoria Graffiti in Covina, the one with the mural of Tuscan hills that looked nothing like Southern California. Silver balloons bobbed like cheap halos. The air smelled of garlic and anticipation. I wore a midnight blue dress I'd woven myself over 3 sleepless nights, threads dyed with indigo pulled from the exact shade of Laguna at dusk. Relatives flew in from Tucson and Reno, smelling of airport coffee and duty-free perfume. Dad's shoulders still filled door frames at 63, gray hair cropped close like a military recruit. Mom kissed both my cheeks, whispered I looked like moonlight poured into silk. Mira arrived 23 minutes late, Blaine scrolling stock tickers on his phone, the kids sprinting to the grandparents like heat-seeking missiles trailing glitter and chaos. I waited until the tiramisu arrived, steam curling like secrets from the espresso
Machine.
I stood. The room hushed the way fabric stills when you pull a thread taut. I tapped my glass with a spoon that chimed like a warning bell. Mom, Dad, 35 years ago you promised each other forever on a budget of love and leftover lasagna. You gave Mira and me the world wrapped in sacrifice. You never complained when the plant cut hours, when the landlord raised rent again, when Mom's knees gave out from scrubbing floors that weren't ours. This is yours. I slid the framed key across the white linen, brass catching the candlelight. Engraved beneath their wedding date, salt air and forever. A beach house. Paid in full. Your name's on the deed. 3 blocks from the ocean. No more rent hikes. No more landlord knocks. Just sunrise coffee and the sound of waves telling you you're finally home. The room detonated. Mom's sob cracked open the air like thunder. She buried her face in my neck, lavender water and disbelief soaking my collar. Dad's eyes, those flint-gray eyes that had survived factory explosions and layoffs and the slow erosion of dignity, leaked like broken pipes. He gripped my hand so hard I felt the calluses he'd earned lifting engines for men who'd never know his name. Myra's hug was a vice, her perfume a cloud of vanilla and desperation. Blaine gripped my hand until bones protested, his smile a shark's. Generous, he said, pupils dilated with the math of what this gift was worth. Extremely generous. I floated on their joy for 2 weeks. I pictured Mom arranging seashells on the windowsill, Dad finally retiring his work boots to the porch. I slept with the deed under my pillow like a child with a love letter. The first fracture came on a Friday that smelled like rain that never arrived. Mom's voice on the phone was thin as onion skin. Sweetheart, come over tonight. We need to talk about the house. I drove the 405 at dusk, the skyline bleeding orange into smog. Their apartment smelled of lemon polish and old regrets. Same. Sagging couch patched with duct tape. Same stack of medical bills rubber-banded like a deck of bad cards. They sat at the Formica table like jurors about to deliver a verdict they didn't want to read. Dad cleared his throat, the sound of gravel under boots. Blaine's commission dried up. Sales force downsized. They're underwater, mortgage, tuition, braces, the works. Mom's words tumbled over each other like beads from a broken necklace. The cottage is spacious.
They need it more right now.
They'll maintain it, pay the utilities, keep it perfect. We'll visit weekends, holidays. It's still ours on paper. The ocean roared in my skull, louder than any wave I'd ever heard. You're gifting away my blood. Not gifting, Mom pleaded, reaching for my hand. I pulled back.
Sharing.
Technically it's. Technically? My laugh sliced the air like a rotary cutter through silk. I drained my future for 10 years. Liquidated my retirement. Mortgaged my condo until I'm paying interest on air. And you're handing it to the daughter who weaponizes grandchildren and guilt. Dad's voice, the one that ended childhood wars with a single raised eyebrow. Family helps family. Be reasonable, Eleanor. Reasonable. The word I'd swallowed since I was 6 and learned that crying over a broken doll meant mom worked an extra shift. Reasonable when I gave up art school so Mira could have braces. Reasonable when I paid Dad's hospital deductible while Mira bought designer diapers. I stood. The chair legs shrieked against linoleum like a warning. Have you already said yes? Mom's nod was a guillotine. Tears already carving tracks through her powder. Mira cried on the phone. Said you were saving their family. That the kids would have to leave their school, their friends. I left without slamming the door. Closed it the way you close a book you never want to open again. The next 48 hours were a hurricane in a teacup. Voicemails stacked like unpaid bills. Mira, you're being dramatic. It's just a house. Blaine, entitled cow, you don't even have kids. Cousin Rita from Vegas quoting proverbs about inheriting the wind. I blocked numbers, deleted threads, uncorked a $12 Malbook and watched the city lights blur into accusations that looked like Christmas, but tasted like ash. Sunday, I drove to Laguna unannounced, the Pacific a sheet of hammered silver under a sky too blue to trust. Blaine's Escalade squatted in the driveway like a chrome toad. I knocked. Mira opened the door in Lululemon and yesterday's mascara, eyes swollen into bruises. Behind her, moving boxes labeled in her loopy script, kitchen fragile, kids art, Blaine's trophies. The living room smelled of diaper cream and entitlement, children's fingerprints smeared across windows like abstract art. My parents' future reading chair? Buried under a sectional the color of avarice. Myra's throw pillows strangled the couch I'd chosen for Mom's afternoon naps. Nail holes pocked walls like bullet wounds from Blaine's ego. Perfect timing. Blaine grinned. Sawdust on his forearms, power drill dangling like a weapon. Hanging the 85-inch. Your folks swung by this morning, brought croissants from that French place in Newport. They're stoked. Stoked. The word curdled in my mouth like milk left in the sun. I walked through rooms now colonized. The kitchen counter where Mom was supposed to roll out pie crust held a tower of takeout containers. The porch swing I'd imagined Dad napping in was stacked with Amazon boxes. Blaine's sound system colonized the corner where Dad's books were meant to live, subwoofer humming like a threat. This escalated quickly, I said, voice flat as the tide before a storm. Blaine shrugged, the motion of a man who'd never been told no. Seize the day. Better school district. Ocean views. We're listing Orange County next week. Upgrade city. Upgrade. I smiled, teeth sharp as pinking shears. The kids deserve roots. Congrats on your forever home. Mira exhaled a breath I hadn't realized she was holding. Blaine clapped my shoulder like we'd brokered a merger. I let him memorize the smug curve of his mouth, the way his eyes priced everything, including me. I drove straight to my attorney, Vanessa Delgado. Sunday dusk, her home office in Pasadena smelled of espresso and retribution, African violets blooming defiant on the windowsill. I laid out the covenant I'd stitched into the deed like a hidden seam. Any change in primary occupancy required my signature in blue ink, notarized, witnessed. She read it twice, eyes gleaming like a hawk spotting a thermal. Breach of covenant.
Clear as daylight.
We file notice of violation with the county recorder. Simultaneously send certified letters to your parents, Mira and Blaine. 72 hours to vacate or the property reverts to you solely. Parents included. No appeal. Family obliteration in 3 business days.
Do it, I said.
My voice was steel forged in the fire of every reasonable I'd ever swallowed. Monday dawn, certified letters flew like carrier pigeons with bad news. I camped in a cafe across Pacific Coast Highway, laptop open to a mood board of ocean hues I didn't see. The barista asked if I wanted room for cream. I wanted room for vengeance. 5:52 p.m., my phone detonated. Mira hysterical, voice cracking like cheap veneer. Blaine threatening lawsuits, bankruptcy, public shaming. Mom's voicemail fractured. There's been a mistake, baby, call us. We can fix this. I let them drown in digital silence, watch the ocean swallow the sun instead. 7:12 p.m., I returned like a landlord from hell. Myra's face was a battlefield of mascara and mucus. Blaine's neck veins throbbed purple. "You can't do this," he spat, spit flecking his lip. "Already did." I flashed the filed docs on my phone, time-stamped, notarized, ironclad. Thursday, the judge signs. Friday, this is mine again. Pack or be removed by sheriff's deputies. Mira collapsed onto the sectional, sobbing about the children's schools, their friends, their stability. I felt nothing but the salt wind through the open window. Wednesday, I returned for a final sweep, needing to see the carcass before burial. Found the smoking gun in the master bedroom, mortgage statements showing Blaine's promotion 3 months prior, commissions up 42%, bonus checks fat as Christmas hams. A printed email from Mira to Blaine's mother, timestamped September 22nd, 3 weeks before the anniversary party. Once Eleanor gifts the house, we guilt Mom and Dad into letting us borrow it indefinitely. She'll fold, she always does. We'll refinance Orange County, pocket the equity, live rent-free. Eleanor makes bank. She won't even notice. They'd never been drowning. They'd been orchestrating a hostile takeover. I photographed every lie, every decimal, every smug emoji. Sent to Vanessa with the subject line fraud. She replied in 2 minutes, "This upgrades us from covenant breach to civil fraud. We could sue for damages, emotional distress, punitive. Your call."
I just wanted them gone.
Thursday, 2:03 p.m., judge's order ping Vanessa's inbox. House mine. 5 p.m. deadline. 4:27 p.m., my best friend Sophia and I pulled up with a locksmith who owed Vanessa a favor. Escalade vanished. Front door ajar like a scream. Inside, apocalypse in miniature. Half-packed boxes bled bubble wrap and broken dreams. A burned scar on the quartz countertop from someone's flat iron. Trash bags, vomited Legos, and half-eaten granola bars. A child's drawing taped to the fridge. A stick-figure family under a yellow sun. Captioned our new home. They'd fled like rats, leaving a sinking ship. They'd scuttled themselves. We changed every lock, the tumblers clicking like vertebrae realigning. Bagged their debris, the locksmith humming Springsteen under his breath. I stood on the deck at twilight, ocean exhaling rose gold across the water. Sophia touched my elbow, gentle as a seamstress testing tension. "You good?" I inhaled freedom, salt, and the faint ghost of jasmine I'd plant tomorrow. "I'm whole." The aftermath was a masterclass in consequences, slow and deliberate as hand-stitching a couture gown. Week 1, I restored. Sanded scratches until the oak forgave, the grain rising like forgiveness under my palms. Replaced stolen light fixtures with brass sconces that caught sunrise and threw it across the walls like gold thread. Planted jasmine along the fence line, roots drinking in the lies and growing anyway. Documented every repair, every receipt, every hour of labor for a file labeled insurance against future betrayal. Week 2, the voicemails evolved. Mom's from rage to remorse, voice cracking like old veneer. Dad's single text, sent at 3:14 a.m. "We were wrong. We taught you sacrifice and forgot to teach you worth." Myra's public Instagram essays about toxic siblings who choose money over blood, her followers flooding my DMs with pitchfork emojis and prayers. I archived, didn't engage, let them exhaust themselves shouting into the void. Week 3, I hired Pacific Coast Property Management. Found tenants, 2 elementary school teachers named Rosa and Mateo who watered plants and paid rent early, who left thank you notes and homemade empanadas on the porch. The income rebuilt my retirement line by line, stitch by stitch. Month 2, Gretchen called me into her glass office, overlooking the 110 freeway. I expected a lecture on focus. On the way, I'd been staring through fabric samples like they were ghosts. Instead, she slid a contract across the desk, Creative Director, West Coast. 40% raise. Remote Fridays. Stock options. "Whatever broke you open," she said, eyes sharp behind tortoiseshell. "Keep it cracked. The light's getting in." I redesigned our summer line. Fabrics that shifted color with light like tide pools, indigo bleeding into turquoise, threads woven with recycled ocean plastic. Sold out in 36 hours. Vogue called it wearable ocean. My